Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, UnWoke.Academy. Welcome to another episode of UnWoke.Academy. I'm your host. We're going to dive in. We have a lot to cover today. The first thing I'm going to make note of is lesson learned. We released a sort of an in-depth study into T-Mobile, which is, if you're listening from abroad, you're more than welcome. But I will tell you that most of this focuses on U.S. types of issues, but it does certainly have global reach and global impact. T-Mobile is, of course, a cell phone carrier service, and they've gone off the deep end with some new policy that they rolled out as of January 1st, 2024, and the backlash has been pretty significant. We did a big research report into that, released it on Substack and a short video that I produced, and boy, oh boy, has the viewership and clicks and shares and all that stuff through the roof. So apparently people really dig that sort of thing. We need to do more of it. We're going to be doing more deep dives into stuff, people, issues, and releasing those. So I want to dive into a couple of big wins. The first thing to know is, I've been saying this for a while now, we will not be privy to our wins. We don't control the media. The globalist leftists control the media, and therefore, when we have wins, we're not going to get any sort of splashy news coverage or whatever. That's by design. It's to keep people feeling discouraged. It's to keep people feeling like the battle that we're in is unwinnable. It's just pure, basic, simple, fundamental psychology, the psychology of battle and warfare. So when you watch, if you watch like the evening news or whatever, you're not going to see the wins that we are able to produce. You're not going to see the pushback from we the people. We are supposed to be diminished, discouraged, minimalized, and marginalized, and even canceled and doxxed and all that stuff. I believe that there are some major, major wins, and we need to celebrate those. Let's call them out, even though we're not going to get a newspaper headline or anything along that line. But let's share them and call them out through those few sources that we have left that are not canceling and censoring the conservatives. An alert reader brought to my attention an interview that was conducted between Jordan Peterson and an ex-BlackRock executive. It's not the ex-BlackRock executive you may be thinking of. I like that guy. He's super cool, and everything I can tell about him, he's good stuff. But here's this thing. It's a pretty long interview, and I just put it at 1.75 speed so that I could listen to it quickly, and kind of blazed my way through, and then did some online research. I think that this fits in the category of a win for us. Here's why. In my estimation, and I'm going to get deeper into BlackRock, where they stand, and that assessment in just a moment. But my sense is that this person left BlackRock and effectively he's left BlackRock and is now disparaging ESG. But then it's interesting because the same person goes on to talk about how his plan is to implement impact strategies for investing and investments. So I actually, to the people that brought this to my attention, I'll briefly read a synopsis of my response. From what I'm gathering, this person says no to ESG, but yes to his version of something that sounds roughly identical. He goes into global planet boiling, or whatever we're supposed to be calling the climate hoax these days, and then seems to take the position that investing in impact strategies could garner enough capital to satisfy United Nations Sustainable Development Initiatives. For this last part, I draw from an article from Pensions and Investments News dated 28 November 2023. So just a few months ago, this person was talking about how he needed to go out there and be this champion of what he's calling, what is the term that he uses here? Impact strategies. Impact strategies are going to counter the global climate crisis with a new type of investing that is going to satisfy the United Nations interests in all their junk and garbage. So let me put that in clearer terms. This guy has left BlackRock and has said BlackRock is doing ESG, and oh gosh, ESG is bad stuff. We don't really want that. Let's do impact investing instead. And I find no discernible difference. I think it's rebranding. And again, to sort of borrow from another area of wokeadoodle and what we experience from the far left, there's frequent rebranding of things to cause confusion and mayhem. So in education, people caught on early to something called CRT, critical race theory, and started to call out school districts. And school districts said, "What are you talking about? What? We don't have any CRT, but we do have DEI." And DEI is just their rebranding of CRT. You can argue that with me all you like. That's what it is. When you take the thing and just slap a different label on it and make it identical and use the foundations of critical race theory under a different banner, it's still critical race theory. I'm not going to get into goofy semantics with anybody. It is what it is, and it's critical race theory. So in this realm, we have people in the financial world who are saying, oh gosh, we recognize all the backlash against ESG and the people don't really want it and they're not buying it. Like electric cars, they're avoiding it. So we should for sure we should avoid ESG. Oh, but come and take a look at this impact investing I'm doing. Hoorah. It's goofy nonsense. So here's another one. This is, by the way, I'm going to hold this up. If you do not get the Epoch Times, some people say Epic, some people say Epoch. If you do not get the Epoch Times, you should sign up for it. I dig it. I read this newspaper. I love it. So here is an article from July of 2023, and it indicates that the CEO of BlackRock is going to stop using the term ESG. Huh, interesting. He says that is due to the misuse of the term. I don't think the term has been misused at all. I think that they're reeling and scrambling and backpedaling because we, the people, saw through it and we want none of it. So if you remember, if you've watched some of these episodes before, the foundation and the reason UnWoke was formed is because I had early exposure to something called ESG. By now, I'm assuming you know what that means. It's environmental, social, and governance. It is the world of finance cramming Green New Deal down our throats for profit and for superficial virtue signaling type of artificial manipulation of business markets and marketplaces and commerce and credit and lending. So here we have the president and CEO or chairman, or whatever his title is, of BlackRock, by far the most recognizable person and company in the whole role of ESG, saying, well, gosh, those people, some people have just misused the term. So we're going to use a little different terminology. Who knows what it's going to be? They'll change it into something like good guy, environment, impact, wokeadoodle, who knows? Just some kind of goofy nonsense. In other words, they will slap a new logo on it and a new brand and get right back after it. And what we've seen, the bits that we have uncovered and dug into and found in the ESG realm are awful. It's dreadfully manipulative and horribly awful. What it boils down to is you've got managers out there who are artificially and subjectively picking winners and losers. There's all this talk, and it all seems really great and wonderful and virtuous on paper. Like, oh boy, if we do ESG and we do enough of the environmental, social, and governance, then ESG is going to get better, and we're going to save the planet by investing in these companies that ESG and it's just like this mind pretzel of nonsense. And those of us who have said, okay, define it. What actually is the ESG part? The answer is, well, it's really virtuous and we're going to save the planet because the environment is really in harm And there are people out there that are being really negatively impacted. And if you don't invest our way, then these people will suffer. And when you ask what people, it can be anything. They'll just fill in the blank depending on what region or zone or whatever. It's like, well, there's systemic racism, and Black and Indigenous and people of color are suffering, and they're anguished all over the world. And when you invest in ESG, it's going to fix that. And then we ask how, and they're like, well, the ESG part is going to really capture and going to put money into fixing the damaged parts of society that are represented by, and that just create this twisting, looping nonsense with no definitive, actual, real answer. By the way, once again, feel free to challenge me on that. I've been asking those questions, and I don't believe yet there are any of the major investment managers, and most all of the small investment managers that I can find have been asking those very same questions. And outside of the occasional answer, like, well, we're going to invest in properties that then have solar panels on the roof, and that will be really cool for the environment and the global boiling or cooling or freezing or frosting or what global whatever climate thing, that's going to stop now because we're investing in these buildings that include these solar panels. And then I ask, like, okay, what is the financial source of funding for the solar panels? Well, it's government funded. So you're taking taxpayer dollars and you're buying the panels at a subsidized discount. What happens when the subsidy disappears? Well, we're not really sure, but right now we can make big money because we're soaking up some government funding. Okay, well, interesting. So let's talk about the source of those solar panels. Are they Chinese? Where are they coming from? Who are the people? Who owns the patents? Who is mining the materials that makes the solar panels? And what's the global impact on the manufacturing, shipping, distribution, and installation of those solar panels? And the answer is pretty much, we don't really know, but for right now, we're getting some government subsidies, so therefore the profit margin is higher. I want nothing to do with that because that's not really an investment model, and it's not really an answer, and it doesn't really answer the primary question that they themselves have brought up, which is, how is it saving the planet? Is the installation of Chinese manufactured solar panels, which, by the way, I don't have it with me, but there's another great article on the misrepresentations applied to Chinese manufactured solar panels. Apparently, according to this big article in Epoch Times, the stated outputs and all that stuff are actually off, and they're not true. So we'll have to get back to that article. That's off topic for this discussion. But the idea that these people are just going to throw out this ESG term and use it enough times that people will become dazzled and mystified, and then therefore invest their trillions of dollars, because that's what we're doing collectively. We, the people of the world, are allowing trillions of dollars to flow over and funnel into the ESG stuff, which brings me back to the victory. We have actually been doing a fairly good job of kind of backpedaling a little bit, but kind of like tapping the brakes on the whole ESG movement as we've seen the battery powered car movement sort of fizzle and actually fundamentally fizzle and evaporate, because no matter what sort of force or incentive or carrot or stick or whatever governments apply, we're figuring out pretty quickly that it is a bunch of smoke and mirrors and hogwash. We have a much shorter lifespan. We have the outrageous cost to replace the battery. We have all kinds of things that are kind of surfacing and people are paying attention to, including unexpected issues around those battery powered cars. By the way, I'm just using the battery powered car as sort of a symbol of the whole Green New Deal type of movement and what it portends. But one thing that came up recently, and I watched and followed some interesting articles on, is fires. The fires break out, and normal fire departments are not prepared to put out a fire at the heat of a lithium burn. I think I'm using the right terminology. I think it's called a lithium burn because there's a lot of lithium in there. But never mind the fact that people are actually figuring out that there's child labor being used in sort of a slave environment, or probably an actual slave environment, with using child slave labor to dredge up and mine these minerals in parts of the world. Then the minerals are shipped by diesel ship over to places in the east to be developed into batteries, and then the batteries are put into newly manufactured cars, and then we're supposed to trash our existing cars and put them into landfill and crunch them up in order to buy this new car that's going to last a shorter period of time and has these minerals that have to be shipped all over the earth. Nobody's really stopped, at least at the global corporate and governance level, and evaluated the impact of that. And add to that, now we're finding out that there's been some dubious practices on the part of China, I'm hearing, where they've actually over manufactured because they could get subsidies, and that there are fields of cars that just never were bought, and they just dumped them into fields. So those lithium batteries are just now apparently rusting and rotting. The whole thing seems pretty scammy and like a big sham, and people are balking. The more we balk and the more we push back, here's that article from the Epoch Times on the chairman, CEO, I'm actually not seeing here, I forget what his title is, who is now kind of having to backpedal and reel and rebrand. It tells me the combination of these two things, the article from the guy who left BlackRock and just formed something that appears to be virtually identical to ESG and mission stature, status, and objective, and also the intention of the of BlackRock itself to backpedal on the brand ESG, we're having an impact, which takes me back to that earlier reference to the post on T-Mobile. What we're doing, I believe, the organizing and fighting back using our wallets, it's working. So we collectively, we're talking to our financial institutions and asking questions about things like ESG. And we're letting places like T-Mobile know that we don't appreciate their communist type of approach to dictatorship and censorship of we the people. The more we're able to step into those conversations, ask questions, push back, and withdraw our money, the more impact we're going to have. And it's a fast impact. Unlike a lot of the sort of legislative moves, and don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to the idea of sort of legislation and creating, um, uh, I guess I'll call it legislative representative pushback. Those types of bills and big major political initiatives, they take a long time. They have to work their way through the system, and sometimes they're often diluted. The left gets an opportunity to get their meddling dollars in, and they pay off politicians to dilute and make them nonsense, or take the teeth out of the bill, all those things, even if it even gets through the gauntlet of political process. And then it has to be signed by somebody and signed into law. And then we have to actually adhere to it and implement the law. That's a different thing entirely, because there are lots of companies out there that skirt law, and they just sort of, they use an army of lawyers to basically challenge laws and legal authorities. Like, okay, well, catch us if you can, because we don't like your law and we're going to ignore it. In the meantime, on the personal side, we the people, when we take our money out, that's done. There's no waiting around for some sort of politician to maybe get off the ball and create something and get a bunch of other politicians. None of that. As soon as collectively we do what I hope is being done with T-Mobile currently, and what we started to really understand in ourselves and our capabilities with things like Target, when we withdrew. By the way, please stop thinking in terms of boycott. The Target thing, the Bud Light thing, um, I think Nike was in there at some point. People were really upset with Nike. Disney Corporation, don't boycott. Vote your values. Vote your values is way bigger and way more long term. So if you're out there shopping for something, some product or service or whatever, think in terms of vote your values. As we like to say, dis the left. That stands for know where you donate, invest, and spend. And the better we get at this, that's where I'm asking for your involvement. Won't take much. I'm not talking about sending money. By the way, if you can support our work financially, great. We'd love to have you on board. There's opportunities on many social media platforms, including Substack, um, potentially eventually Twitter, etc., to help fund and support us. That'd be wonderful. But no, what we're talking about is you taking an active role in your financial life and making solid, more grounded decisions based on your values on where you donate money, invest money, and spend your money. The impact can be huge. And when we do that successfully, we have big wins. And when we have those big wins, my plan is to hop on this call, this show, create a video, and say, hoorah, good job, people. We're doing a good job. This is winnable, especially when we vote our values. I'm Jonathan Broadbent. This has been another episode of UnWoke.Academy. Thanks for listening.